She's been covering the Humboldt story since it began, since the tragedy on April 6th. Olivia, can you tell me what the mood's been like lately here in Humboldt? You've been here for a few days.
Yeah, exactly, Bridget. Well, there's a lot of excitement ahead of this home opener for the Humboldt Broncos. It's the first game they're going to play on home ice here at the Elgar Peterson Arena behind us since April's deadly bus crash. And I can tell you, just on Main Street, I was here a couple of weeks ago here in Humboldt covering another story, and there's a billboard actually there that used to say prayers for the Humboldt Broncos, and that's now changed now, Bridget, to Go Broncos Go. And I think that says a lot about how people here are feeling. There's lots of signs in the community about the home opener, and a lot of people are expected here tonight. It is a sold-out crowd, so there's a lot of anticipation for puck drop tonight.
And we were actually told that the tickets, 1,800, almost 2,000, sold out in just minutes. So people are very excited to see the Humboldt Broncos play. They're playing the Nipawin Hawks, as you mentioned. I was in Nipawin when the day after the Humboldt Broncos tragedy, and people in Nipawin really felt this tragedy as well. They were opening their homes to people who needed it. I remember there was a church service there as well.
Right. That's where a lot of the families and anybody who was following the team that day, that's where they went, right? When they were following that bus, they were all directed to the church there to find out what the count of survivors were and that sort of thing. And I remember actually calling the priest, or the pastor rather, of that community, and it was a very touching conversation. And of course it was still very early on. Nobody really knew until late into the night what exactly had transpired, but it was very emotional, and it's still very raw here in Humboldt today.
And to play this team certainly means a lot. They'll finally get to play the Nipawin Hawks. So let's talk about this game. What are we going to see? Who's going to be here? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so puck drop is just in a couple hours from now, and it's a completely new team. This team has rebuilt since April's deadly bus crash. There are 2 survivors, though, from that fatal collision who are returning, Braden Camerud and Derek Patter. So they'll be playing on the ice tonight. And there's completely new coaching staff, a new athletic therapist, and pretty much everyone's new. They've had to rebuild from the ground up. And then after the game tonight, there is going to be a special ceremony to honor those 16 lives lost. Of course, the coaches, staff, and players who are no longer with this team. So it's going to be an emotional evening. The families of the 16 victims have been invited here tonight to watch the game and be part of the ceremony, as well as the survivors. And I want to tell viewers that there's actually pictures of every single one of the 16 victims. There's actually photographs of them with their names. They're on separate signs here in the driveway to the arena. So all the cars that are coming in here, there's really no other way to get into this arena. Everybody has to pass by every single one of those 16 victims, their photos and their names. So it is very heavy still in Humboldt.
I saw one car drive in, and they took pictures of every single sign, which, it's still really heavy here, and we're definitely remembering the players who aren't here to play. One interesting thing that if you're watching the game tonight, you might notice, there's actually no permanent captain right now in the Humboldt Broncos team, because two of the returning players and the two returning players and another player as well. So, some nice touches everywhere.
Yeah, they still are honoring this team, and they do want to carry on their legacy. And that's what Braden Camerud told me, that, this is why he's decided to play again. Braden is a 20-year-old. He's from Saskatoon, not far from here. That's where you're from, Bridget. And he really wanted to continue playing for those who couldn't. And among the 13 survivors, there's still some who are still injured, and 2, let's not forget, who are still in hospital. And that is why so many people still in Humboldt to this day still have hockey sticks outside their doorsteps. And just here at the arena, I don't know if you can see, but there are 16 hockey sticks just outside here, the window. And that's, of course, to commemorate those victims.
Yeah, and across the province, we've been seeing hockey sticks still left out, even into the new school year, which is quite lovely and quite special. Also, the team is being rebuilt, as you mentioned, but also the administration, the organization has had a lot of changes. So, Olivia, what can you tell us about who the new faces are at the Humboldt Broncos organization.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest change may be the new head coach, right? Nathan Oystrick is his name. He was born and raised in Saskatchewan, then went to the U.S. to play for the NHL, had a very successful career there. And then when this job opening, when it was posted for the head coach position here, the general manager, he applied and he was accepted. He's a fairly young coach, and he says he really does want to focus on developing young players, not just for their skills, but also for their character, just like Darcy Hogan did, who was, of course, the former head coach here for the Humboldt Broncos. So that's perhaps the biggest change. And, you know, I think he is reflecting, of course, on how powerful this moment will be tonight when the puck drops. But he also wants to make sure the players just focus on the game, focus on hockey, and that return to normalcy that this event will bring.
We're getting a few comments from people on our Facebook page. Please do write in with your questions, anything you want to ask Olivia or I about Humboldt or about anything that's been happening with this story. We do have one comment. Sherry Heiser writes, "Good luck Broncos, Canada and the hockey community are with you tonight." We're certainly feeling it here. Olivia, what has the administration been telling you about what they want to do with this game? Do you think, I mean, of course people want them to do well, and we're here to remember the Humboldt Broncos, but do they want to win?
They do want to win. So they're facing off against, again, their rivals, the Nipawin Hawks, who, like you say, they were supposed to face off against the evening of that bus crash. And, you know, that game that they were going to on April 6th, that was a tight game. It was a playoff game. And, you know, Nipawin Hawks, they're a good team. So it will be interesting to see, of course, how this goes tonight. Of course, the Humboldt Broncos want to win. And people, you know, it's going to be a very powerful moment when puck drops. And the staff really do, the new coaching staff here, want the players to focus on the game, focus on their skills. And that is why they've decided to have the game first and then have a tribute for the victims afterwards. That was a decision made deliberately so that the players could, again, just focus on the game themselves and then reflect afterwards. They didn't want to have this whole ceremony first and then have the players play afterwards.
Yeah, we're expecting a lot of emotions, for sure.
Yeah, it was a very respectful decision on their part.
So back to the rebuilding of the Humboldt Broncos. We've been learning a lot about that in the past week. You actually spoke to their new trainer. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that's right. So he is taking over the position that Dana Bronze held. Of course, she was the only female with the Humboldt Broncos, the only female on the bus. And, you know, he's having a very good time here getting to know the players. He says they're a very resilient group of young men between the ages of 16 to 20. But he did tell me about this one moment where he had to actually clean out the trainer's office. And he said that he was going through the paperwork there, and there was one document from Hockey Canada dated April 1st. And he said that he just had to stop, get out of the room for 15 minutes and just collect his thoughts because it was just too much. So we're hearing a lot of those stories here because the memories of the old team are still all over the Elgar Peterson Arena. And even the core covenant for former head coach Darcy Hogan is painted on the walls here. It's immortalized. His motto is family first, you know, treat your teammates with respect, the coaching staff. And that's very much living on here, even though Darcy is no longer with us.
We actually just got a question on Facebook from John Hardy, and he's asking, who's the new coach? Can we go through that again, just so everybody knows exactly who's going to be leading this team?
Yeah, exactly. So again, the new coach is Nathan Oystrick. He's somebody new to Humboldt. He moved here from the United States, even though he's born and raised in Saskatchewan, and he's decided to come here to just help out because this is the province that he loves. This is where he's from. He's a fairly young man. He just had a recent career with the NHL, and he's here to rebuild the team from scratch. So he says there's been a lot of pressure. Camera crews have been around him this whole time. There's a huge media presence here, and they really haven't got a break since April. You know, constant questions. It's almost as if there's a news story every day to do with the Humboldt Broncos. Somebody's doing something, a music video or a new memorial, or there's, you know, an update on a player's condition or something like that. It's just constant. And I think the feeling here at Humboldt is that this is a celebration of the new team, a new beginning. It's also a reflection on the past, but then also, you know, hopefully after tonight, people can finally get a chance in Humboldt to heal.
We've heard the words people moving on and new normal. We've been hearing that a lot over the last little while. Sorry, John Hardy, we didn't finish your entire question. Part of your question was, who's the captain of the Humboldt Broncos? We answered that a few minutes ago, but the captain, there's not going to be necessarily one captain for the Broncos this year. Logan Schatz passed away in that crash on April 6th, so they're sharing it between the two returning players and one other player who will be alternate captains. We have a few more questions here.
Yeah.
Is there any chance of a televised game? Yes, the game will be televised. We have another question here. How are the new players adapting to this environment? Have you heard anything about that, Olivia?
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the players have been, they've been staying out of the media spotlight, right? Yeah. I mean, they're trying to get a team together here and for them to focus on the game. Very young, between the ages of 16 to 20. But from the people I've spoken to, and from speaking to Braden Cameron, a survivor who's a veteran on this team, he's 20 years old, one of the oldest here. Everybody's getting along. They're still getting to know each other. I know the athletic therapist just told me that he's still trying to learn names, but they are bonding and they are hoping, that they'll come together for tonight and win this game.
We have to remember too, if we haven't seen all of these young people in the media, the questions that we've been asking have not been easy either. So for them, some just aren't ready to come back and chat with us yet. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about what's going to happen at the tribute. What have we been hearing about that?
Well, the tribute's going to happen about 15 minutes after the game tonight. And I see a question here, where will the game be televised? The answer is it will be on TSN. TSN is carrying the game live. So then after that, there will be ceremony here. It's not I'm not exactly clear on what we're going to expect, but there will be some sort of memorial here for the 16 victims. And the families of all those victims and the survivors, the 13 survivors, have all been invited to come here tonight to be in the stands, to take part in this. So nobody really knows what's going to go through their minds when this all happens, when the puck drops tonight. It will be very interesting to see how people react. And that's actually something that Devin Cannon, he's a billet parent here. He's a longtime Humboldt resident. He told me just the other day he's going to be the in-house announcer for this game. And he told me that he has announced a few of these games. He announced the exhibition game that was just held on Friday here in Humboldt. But that for this home opener, for this home game of the Broncos, the first one since the bus crash, he isn't sure how he's going to react when he steps up to that mic and he sees the players on the ice. He lost 2 of his billet sons in the crash, so it's been very emotional for him and his family, but very resilient. Just like the team, he's decided to take in 2 new players this year. He's rebuilding just like the team, moving forward, and he's very much looking forward to this game. Excitement and emotion as well.
Yeah, and we've been seeing that this whole time. People who want to be involved with the Humboldt Broncos, despite this tragedy, they're seeing how the community has responded, and they want to be part of it. Nathan Neustrick told us a couple weeks ago when we were in Humboldt for Hockey Day, when the Stanley Cup was here, that he was getting calls, players calling him directly who just wanted to be on this team, just wanted to be involved. So we're seeing a lot of people who, it might be hard for them, but they're definitely committed to bringing back the Humboldt Broncos. Do we know if anybody from the NHL will be here today? Any big names?
I haven't seen any announcements, to be honest, about that, but there are a lot of sports casters and sports, people here today, big names in hockey, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the case. And like you say, the Stanley Cup was just here in Humboldt, which was a very exciting event. You were there. Do you remember what stood out to you the most about that day?
I think it was, of course, the emotion. The Stanley Cup was a big deal. To me, it was the people who came from far to be here, and it wasn't even the first day. Of course, the Stanley Cup is a draw, but we had people here from BC, from the further reaches of Alberta, and it wasn't just parents. They brought their whole families. They all had Humboldt Broncos jerseys on. So this, of course, we keep saying it, but it really has hit a lot of people in a lot of different areas, and hockey is really a small world. We're learning that more and more here.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because right behind us, they're setting up, it's the Spotlight. So that is a clothing store here in Humboldt that makes uniforms, essentially, makes Broncos gear. So they're going to be selling a bunch of jerseys here tonight. And the reason why I bring up Spotlight is because the owner, Mike Yeager, and his wife have had visitors from, not kidding, Russia, Europe.
Yeah.
They've signed his guest book. in the store. They've been coming to Humboldt over the summer. People have been making detours on the Trans-Canada Highway 2.5 hours north to come to this city, the small Saskatchewan city, fewer than 6,000 people, just to see what's here, to pay tribute and to buy Broncos gear. There's something about wearing the Humboldt Strong t-shirts, bracelets, whatever it is, that is really uniting people across the country. Even yesterday, we were just doing a live hit here for CBC News Network, and somebody passed by from Alberta, and she was actually coming here for powwow in Fort Capel, made the long drive up to Humboldt just to check it out. And she said, I wish I had a ticket to the game tonight. And of course it's sold out, but even somebody who has no association to Humboldt really feels drawn to this place and wants to take part in the game and the festivities tonight.
And I'm sure that people, even if they don't have a ticket, they're going to be tuning in for sure. A lot of people, I'm sure, were buying tickets from further away since they sold out that quickly. So it'll be interesting to see the faces here today, but definitely everybody's ready for a big game. And I love that you shared that about going from Humboldt Strong and praying for the Broncos, and now the billboard outside of town says "Go Broncos, go!" So people are excited.
People are excited. There is something new in the air, I would say. It's a change of mood. It's been pretty somber, pretty sad over the last couple months. I know in the summer a lot of people, of course, like anybody in Saskatchewan, they're gone to the lake for the summer, but a lot of people were gone for quite a long time in this city, just to get away from it, right? And there's been lots of reporters here just over the last few weeks. So, I've been asking people about that. How do you feel about the media coverage, about, all these questions being asked of the team? But everybody's been saying, they love the support. They love how, we've seen that with the GoFundMe campaign, right? $15 million raised for the Humboldt Broncos. That's unprecedented in Canada. So, there's something about this team, something about hockey that's really united people across Canada and around the world.
Yeah, we're getting a few more questions, or rather comments, from our Facebook Live. Please do write in if you have any more questions, something you're unsure about or you've been following and you want to know more. Just let us know and we'll answer your question on here. Lorraine Robinson wrote in to say, "Good luck, Broncos, moving forward in remembrance of those who left so suddenly from your lives." Thanks, Lorraine. Also, Mark Curtis Condon, he writes in, "The Condon family and Airdrie will be wearing jerseys and watching tonight. God bless to the new players, coaching staff, and community tonight and this season." Thanks, Mark. I'm sure it's very appreciated. Ryan Woods asks, "Who's going to win tonight?" Well, Olivia, you're our Humboldt expert. Who's going to win?
I'm not going to make that call.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Both teams are good, and they're rivals, right? The Nipawin and Humboldt are pretty close together geographically, and again, this is going to be a powerful moment when both of these teams face off, because Humboldt was supposed to play against the Nipawin Hawks the evening of that bus crash, and even though the bus crash obviously did really affect people here in Humboldt, it has also affected people in Nipawin. So this is just going to be a very significant development in this story.
And to think of it too, those first responders who were out there first on the scene, a lot of them were from Nipawin, or are from Nipawin.
All along that highway to Humboldt, from Humboldt to Nipawin, people have been touched by this tragedy. And
they continue to drive past the crash site a lot. So, it's still very much, even if you're not from Humboldt, people in Saskatchewan, as we know, have been very, very touched by this tragedy. So, Olivia, leading up to game day, you've been speaking to a lot of people in the community. Can you share maybe somebody who really touched you in the last little while?
Wow.
I'm sure there are many.
In Humboldt, there's been several people. We've been speaking to mostly the new staff here of the team and that sort of thing. But, just recently, the stories we've been covering, I went to Adam Harold's farm, right? He was the youngest victim in the Humboldt Broncos crash. I visited his dad and mom. I was actually in the combine with his dad for several hours, and we were just talking about his son, who would have been in that trainer seat or actually combining with him at this time of year, harvest season. And now, they're not sure who's going to take over the family farm, because the hope was that Adam would go on to a successful hockey career and then come back and take over the farm. So, this tragedy has touched so many people so many different ways, and it's not getting easier for a lot of people. Grief it's very individual, right? And I was actually just speaking to the executive director of mental health services here the other day, Haley Kennedy, and she told me that there's been a 20% increase in demand for counseling services since July, since the start of July, over last year. So that's 20% increase since last year. So, you know, it's not always getting easier, and some people who maybe didn't feel like they were affected are now asking and reaching out for help. And there are going to be grief counselors in the stands tonight.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm sure there will be some things. You know, there's been some conversations around the arena today of how will everybody feel when they see the puck drop? You know, how will whoever's facing off, how will they feel? The last time that the puck dropped for them, all their best friends were here. So it's going to be difficult, and definitely those mental health counselors will be needed from what we're hearing around today. Let me see if you do have your questions for us about Humboldt and anything relating to the tragedy or about the game today, please send us a comment on this Facebook Live, and we'll try to answer it. A few developments in the last little while. We know that GoFundMe campaign that you mentioned. $15 million, over $15 million that was raised. So right now that is in the courts, trying to decide how much everybody is going to get and what's going to happen with that. There has been some money released to the families to help them start rebuilding, but those needs are going to be very different for everybody. There are some people who were who are still in bad physical shape. Of course, there's the mental health. Can you tell me about the variety of needs of these people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are 2 survivors who were paralyzed.
Yeah.
There are 2 who remain in hospital. Let's not forget about them. And there's several survivors who are still, recovering from their injuries emotionally and physically, like you say. So it's very hard to determine, can you imagine that job, just trying to divvy up that money? I mean, that is a hard task. And the team even admitted that perhaps not everybody's going to be happy with the result. But speaking to families, I mean, everybody just kind of wants to see how this plays out. There is a board that's been created to make recommendations with some very well-recognized name, Haley Wickenheiser. There's, trauma specialists on that board. So we'll have to see what kind of recommendations they make in the fall.
Very difficult job for them. We have another great comment here from Haley Teckle. Thanks, Haley. She says, "Go Humboldt, go. I hope they win the first game." I think a lot of people in this arena will agree with you.
Yeah, it's going to be electrifying.
Yeah.
And, the high school in Humboldt is actually attached to this arena behind us, the Elgar Peterson Arena. And they had a green and gold day today. So they actually took a big school photo, and it's it's just another way of celebrating this new era and bringing everyone together. So I thought that was really sweet.
And we should mention, we've been seeing the kids from the high school go in and out since school started again, and even back in April. So they know we're here. They're starting to be pretty friendly with the media, waving at us. But we should mention that the high school students have been somewhat sheltered from the media and have been given their space.
Yeah, and that's what the principal said too, because of course the tragedy did hit them. There were players who were part of that high school, and there's actually a memorial. I was just there yesterday in the atrium to the Broncos, so it's still very much front and center, but at least now with this home opener, everyone's just trying to celebrate this new era for them.
Yeah, a lot has happened. I'm thinking back since April, a lot has happened.
And I do also want to mention another thing. I just saw 2 young women wearing jean jackets, and these are the jean jackets that the girlfriends all made, girlfriends of the players who were playing for the Humboldt Broncos. So some of these girlfriends are going to be here tonight, taking part in all of this, just like the families and the survivors. Yeah, so that's pretty powerful.
I get shivers thinking about that. Yeah, so many people who were really personally affected by this tragedy. And I'm glad that you mentioned the girlfriends, because Olivia did a story on that not long ago. And I remember when it came out thinking, almost forgot, these young women are a very big part of the Broncos organization.
Yeah, because I mean, these were all young men, and many of them did have girlfriends, and some of them, they were the boys' best friends, right?
Exactly.
They were the ones who the boys were texting on the bus just before this crash happened. So the girls all came together and they made jean jackets with their boyfriend's last name on them. The ones who were deceased, they had angel wings on the back, so it's pretty powerful, and that's, we're seeing some of those girls head to the arena here tonight.
Yeah, those are images that definitely don't leave you. And it's nice that they're wearing the jackets.
Yeah,
so
and they were all here just a few months ago taking a photo and actually going to the bench where the Broncos play and where they sit, just to experience what that's like.
All right, we have a few. Oh, here, Ryan Wood says, "Give us a high five for the Broncos." Well, thank you for directing our Facebook Live. 5. High five, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have mics in our hands. I'm sorry.
Virtual high five.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking about the people who are cheering for Nipawin today. Maybe they won't be getting quite as many high fives, but we're thinking about them.
Well, yeah, and it'll be a very interesting game. I'm sure a lot of people from
Absolutely.
Nipawin are coming here tonight. Yeah.
Oh, and I wonder who they're cheering for.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to hear the cheers in the arena for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, we don't necessarily know everybody who's going to be here in Humboldt, but that will definitely be interesting to learn later, since we should remind people this is a sold-out game. The tickets sold just in minutes, so people want to be here and they want to see what's happening. Yeah, Olivia, can you tell me a little bit more about who you spoke to today?
Yeah, I mean, we've just been speaking to people here in the community who are coming here, and everybody has a different story, a different reason about why they're here. And I want to say that I was just here for the Stanley Cup just a couple weeks ago, as were you. Yeah. And I remember I had to gather one more interview from just somebody from the stands, a fan, somebody who was taking part in that event. And it was actually a billet parent, somebody who was watching, who has been watching these games for years. This is just somebody I found in the stands, in Humboldt, and he got very emotional when he just started talking to me in those few moments, talking about how important it is to see this young team rebuild and to hit the ice. It's very important for the community to move forward and to signal a change, to the next step in this whole healing process.
Absolutely. They need to get back on the ice, and people are very excited. Let me tell you when the puck's going to drop. It's going to be around 6:45. So that game will probably run until around 9 o'clock, and then we're going to have the tribute to the fallen players and the people who passed away in that crash. Anything else we need to know before we head out, Olivia? Anything you want to tell people?
Well, with that, there is going to be a scrum with the two coaches.
Yes.
So Nathan Oystrick, the head of the Humboldt Broncos, and the head of the Nipawin Hawks, both of those coaches will be speaking to reporters following the game, and then there will be this ceremony. And as we've been saying, the families of the 16 victims and the 13 survivors have all been invited here tonight. There are photographs of all the victims in the driveway of this arena. So everybody who's coming here tonight will have to pass by and reflect on those faces, those coaches, players, and staff who have been lost. So it's going to be a very powerful event, very emotional, and it's really hard to say what's going to go through people's minds. It's hard to comprehend the level of emotion, but it's going to be a very special event that I don't think anybody here is going to forget anytime soon.
Yes, thank you so much for this, Olivia. So
Thank you, Bridget.
6:45, this is going to be on. Thank you for joining us in this Facebook Live.